The name you put on your family matters far less than the patterns living inside it. Whether it be a narcissistic family, an alcoholic family, an abusive family, a divorced family, there are all kinds of labels and diagnoses, and I know that, and I've used those for years, and they were helpful in many instances. But what I really found, and maybe you would never use a word like that about your parents, such as narcissistic or alcoholic, or most of the people I've worked with never did, at least not at first. Most of us view our problems on a personal level versus a pattern or systems level. I have found out making this shift really makes a difference in healing, recovery, managing relationships, and overcoming trauma. And I'm going to talk about that shift today. The more you watch my videos, the more you will see this thread throughout my whole approach. Many people responded these ways. Well, yeah, my family or my parents were difficult. Yeah, they were like old school. Well, she did her best. Mom did her best. And they said, well, I had a very tough childhood with my parents. I even deserved some of it. I want you to stay with me in this video. By the end of the video, you'll know if the pattern is yours. I want you to stay with me in this video. By the end of this video, you'll know if the pattern is yours and how much you've been carrying. The first lesson, it was never just your parents or parent. I might even add, even if there's been trauma in the family, even if one parent was really problematic, it still is never just the parent. The biggest mistake I made early in my career was staring at one person everyone pointed to. I spent years trying to understand a single parent, and the longer I sat with families, the clearer it became I was studying one instrument while the whole orchestra played and ignored the rest of the orchestra. And I'm not trying to find who to blame. I'm talking about a dynamic in which we over-focus on either data, a name, a diagnosis, and missing the patterns that are so important that can help us recover later. A family is a system, and the system runs on unspoken rules. Keep the most anxious person comfortable, might be one rule. Never name what's happening. Protect the family image at any cost. Never question your parent or the family. Just do what you are told. Once you can see the rules, you stop asking what's wrong with one person and start seeing how the whole house was organized to keep those rules in place. Actually, everyone played a part, even the ones who looked like bystanders. The quiet parent who saw everything and said nothing and was holding the system up just as much as anyone else. The day you stop looking for one bad person and start seeing a system, your whole childhood begins to make much more sense. And here's the part almost nobody gets, and they don't get told this. Families aren't simply healthy or broken. They sit on a spectrum or on a continuum. Some run on a little bit of anxiety, dysfunction, and intensity and reactivity, and connection is mostly safe. Some run on a lot of anxiety and reactivity, where love and reactivity are braided together so tightly you can't tell which one is coming at what time. And some are built almost entirely around it, where being yourself is treated as a threat. You don't have to decide where yours lands yet. Just notice if the patterns feel familiar, because the further along it sits, the more of you it asks you to give up. Number 2. Your role was an assignment. You didn't choose it. Every anxious family hands out jobs. If the family's not perfectly balanced emotionally as a system, then somebody's going to have jobs they're going to have to do to right this imbalance. And the problem is, in righting that imbalance, it causes more imbalance. The golden child carries the image. The invisible child learned to need nothing. The peacemaker read every room before they ever learned to read themselves. And the scapegoat carried the blame for the anxiety the whole family refused to feel. What if we learn that's the scapegoat? What I've also learned is that often the scapegoat is usually the healthiest person in the family. They're the one who saw the truth, who had insight into what was going on. They're the one in which the system saw them as having the truth and then needed to discredit them. And that's why the family needed to discredit the scapegoat. And whatever role you were given, you're still performing it. in your marriage, at your job, in every room you walk into. The casting happened before you could ever talk for yourself, and nobody ever told you the play was over. Lesson number 3, what you call your personality and self-awareness were a defense you built to survive. Somewhere along the way, you decided this is just who you are. An overthinker, a perfectionist, a people pleaser, too sensitive. I've seen it from that chair I sat in thousands of times. Those traits were built. You learned to scan moods because the weather in your house could turn in seconds. You learned to be perfect because mistakes were dangerous. You learned to give endlessly because being useful was the only way to feel safe. That's programming. And while your self-awareness feels permanent, programming can be removed, changed, altered. You are not who that house required you to be. Number 4. You left home, but it didn't leave you. A woman I worked with moved 2,000 miles away from her mother, or maybe it was 1,600 miles. In 10 years, she had almost no contact with her mother. And when a text from her mother would show up and it would light up on her phone, she told me she felt like she was 12 years old again before she finished reading it. The distance had protected her life. Unfortunately, it had not touched the programming. This is the hardest truth I know about high anxiety families. They don't live in that house anymore. They live in your nervous system, in the critical voice that narrates your day, in who you flinch around, who you perform for, and what you believe you're worth. You carry the family with you, which is why you cannot simply move away from it. There may be times where you might need to move away from it, but that doesn't fix the programming. Hold on to her story, and I'll tell you how it ends before we're done in the video. Lesson 5. Managing your family is not the same thing as healing from it. I've watched people spend decades on strategies, understanding the dysfunction until they could write a textbook on their family, explaining themselves. One more honest conversation, one more letter, boundaries, low contact, no contact. And in 45 years, I've watched every one of those strategies help people survive. And I have never watched a single one heal them, because every strategy keeps your attention pointed at your family, what they did, what they might not do, what they did, what they might do next, how to handle them. Even understanding keeps you studying them. Insight does not equal change. Let me say that again. Insight does not equal change. I'm not against insight, but many times what I found was insight comes after someone changes. And often we think if I get enough insight, I will change. But that's a whole nother discussion that we can have, and I will have and have had in other videos. You can name every pattern and every tactic and explain 100 ways your family members were wrong, bad, unhealthy, and why they should change, and still react exactly the way you did when you were 9 years old. Healing begins the day you change the target. The work was never to manage them out there. The work was never to manage them out there. The work is to get them out of you, out of how you think, how you react, and how you love. Lesson number 6. No one from your past is coming to set you free. This is the one people fight me on the most. Some part of you is still waiting for the apology, for the day they finally understand what it cost you. For one person to stand up and say it was never your fault. I have sat with people in their 70s who were still waiting for that to happen. I want to say this as gently as I know how. Maybe that acknowledgement comes one day. Maybe it doesn't. But as long as your healing waits on it, the waiting itself becomes the last way the system holds you. The moment you stop expecting the people who broke something in you to be the ones who repair it, your healing will truly begin. Stop depending on what they're capable of. Grieve the ending you wanted. Then go build the life you needed.